So today I want to talk a little bit about frame rate in regards to multiplayer games specifically, and how massive a disadvantage it is if you are still on the last generation of systems or just playing multiplayer games at 30 frames per second in general. So I put together various clips from various different games. If it says 30 frames per second on the screen, that means it was recorded on my base Xbox One system. And if it says 60 frames per second or 120 frames per second, it was recorded on my Xbox Series S. So yeah, I was on the Xbox One, just the base model, for about 7 years, and then this past holiday, Halo Infinite came out, one of my favorite series of all time, and I was playing the multiplayer game, and it only took me about a match to realize that that shit was in 30 frames per second. I was getting my ass handed to me game in and game out, and I was like, you know what? As I have a voice crack, I cannot handle this anymore. I cannot do it. I'm tired of going 7 and 20 every match. It's not me. I'm not the problem. It's the game. So I went out and bought a Series S, and I have not looked back since. I am beasting. I am destroying kids. I am still getting my ass handed to me sometimes, but don't tell anybody. And yeah, I mean, I know the next generation of systems are pretty pricey. You know, the Series X and the PlayStation 5 are running over market value just simply because most stores and most places don't have them in stock. But if you're like me and you just want to get your toes wet, you just want to dip your feet in the water just a little bit, I highly recommend going with the Xbox Series S. It is a little beast, a little monster, and it pretty much every multiplayer game you can think of is running at 60 frames per second, if not higher, on the Series S. So what I would do is get the Series S, test it out for a year or two, and then if you want to spend more money, then you can upgrade to the PS5 or the Series X. That's what I would do. That's what I'm doing currently. So yeah, like I was mentioning earlier, I'm mainly a multiplayer gamer. Like I do enjoy a good single player game, but for the most part I'm playing multiplayer games like 75% of the time. So the disadvantage that you're at when you're playing at a lower frame rate is just, it's pretty self-explanatory. I mean, you can see it, you can feel it. I'm sure if you are on a last gen system, you get frustrated, you know, because there's like lag spikes here and there. It's actually your frame rate dropping. But especially in like high intense battles and stuff, if there's multiple players on the screen, like Warzone's a really good example, or any of the battle royale games, if like a lot of stuff is happening on the screen at once, Battlefield is another example, your frames are going to drop. It's going to feel like you're lagging. It's you know, you're going to not see anything 1 second, and then all of a sudden you're dead and you're like, what the hell happened? That was your frames dropping, if you didn't know. So yeah, I cannot state enough just the pure smoothness and fluidity of 60 frames per second when it comes to multiplayer games. Even if you're a beast at 30 frames per second and you don't think you need an upgrade, you'll be even more of a beast if you go and start playing these games at 60. So I remember distinctly getting the Series S, and like the first day I immediately hooked up the Series S and I went to Pornhub to watch some, just kidding. I immediately hooked it up and went on Halo Infinite. I was just blown away. You know, I was doing better, it felt better. I wasn't as stressed out. I mean, the game wasn't annoying me as much. There wasn't any problems. And this was like my first system where I was able to play games at a higher frame rate. I've never had a PC. And speaking of PC, that's another thing that kind of annoyed me with like Warzone and some other games. It basically, as a console gamer, you are forced to play crossplay on majority of these games nowadays. And if you have a PC or you have the money to build a PC, that is fantastic. But PC gamers definitely have advantages. They're able to run games at 200 plus frames per second. They have FOV sliders on games like Warzone, whereas console players don't. Just little things like that. So playing at 30 frames per second, playing a game like Warzone, and you're connecting to PC players that are playing it at 200 frames per second, you're going to get your ass kicked like I was. At least playing at 60 or 120 frames per second gives you a little more even playing field, if I do say so myself. So yeah, this was just a video I've been wanting to make for a while. Wanted to talk a little bit about frame rate. Again, I know that these consoles are very expensive, so maybe try to save up to it. Maybe try to just get the Series S. I know even if you're a PlayStation gamer, just hop on the Series S for a year or two. Majority of these games have crossplay now anyway, so you'll still be able to play with your friends regardless of being on the Series S. So yeah, I would say about 75 to 80% of the time that I'm gaming, I am playing multiplayer games. And you know, single player is one thing. Everybody wants higher frame rate, even for single player games. playing 30 frames per second is annoying, but I would much rather play a single player game at 30 frames than a multiplayer game, because you're not competing against little 12-year-olds that are screaming at you and shitting on you with better technology and better frame rate. Yeah, I highly recommend it if you are a multiplayer game. It is a must. It is a must if you are a multiplayer gamer to invest in these next generation systems. And yeah, let me know in the comments down below what you guys think about the the differences of the frame rates. Did you guys feel a huge difference when you originally jumped from last gen to this gen? And yeah, I'll kiss you guys later. Peace.